I am looking for a particular animated short that terrified me as a child. I've been looking on and off for it for nearly 4 years. Maybe it doesn't exist. Maybe nobody should ever find it. But if someone can, it's The Flood. This short animation was terrifying as a child. The scene is still burned into my mind 28 years later. It's of a young boy sleeping in his bed. Above the bed is a ticking clock. All the lights in the room are off, and it's very dark. Suddenly, the clock begins to slow down its ticking, and eventually it stops. On midnight. When the clock stops, a greenish-bluish man climbs out of the clock. The boy wakes up just in time to see this man dressed in black grab him out of bed and kidnap him by carrying him through a window. The Clockman takes the boy on some kind of terrifying adventure and brings him back to his bed before sunrise.
In 2012, a user known as Commander Santa posted this message onto the Flood forums in the hopes of uncovering a missing animated short from his childhood. Little did he know, however, that this thread would kickstart the search for one of the most sought-after pieces of lost media, a search that lasted for 5 years. A piece of lost media known as Clockman. The original thread by Commander Santa that initiated the long hunt for Clockman was at first dismissed as creepypasta bait, and nothing more than a troll looking for attention. Others questioned his memory, given that he was, according to one of his responses, sick when he allegedly viewed it, leading some to believe that it may have been nothing more than just a fever dream.
I remember feeling great terror whilst watching it. The Clockman abducted the little boy and took him to places where he did not want to go. I can't remember where exactly, but I seem to remember the boy repeatedly asking to go home. Clockman just ignored him like he couldn't hear him. He kept dragging the boy through all kinds of scary places. I remember being scared for the boy and just wishing the Clockman would take him home.
His responses to these accusations added to the whole creepypasta feel of it all, such as his desire to see Clockman one last time before he passed away, and how he thought of the short throughout all aspects of his life, junior high, high school, college, and even now as a father. It seemed that Clockman really haunted him, and he truly became obsessed with finding it. However, for every dismissal, there were multiple users who believed him. Commander Santa was a respected member of the community, and he wasn't one to troll his fellow members. His description of the plots and appearance of the Clockman were so vivid, so detailed, that many couldn't help but believe him. And inevitably, many others just loved the idea of what he was describing and joined along for the ride, beginning a 5-year hunt for this supposed stop-motion film. Commander Santa described what he remembered of the Clockman's appearance: a large bushy beard and a long cape. Several animated shorts were ruled out early on, even though they were eerily similar to Clockman, such as The Clock Store, The Sandman, and the opening to Nutcracker Fantasy.
But look out if you were awake past bedtime. The ragman would catch you. And when he did, she said, he would smile wickedly, point his crooked cane, and turn you into a mouse.
An incredibly helpful clue was given by Commander Santa as well: Pinwheel. Commander Santa was positive that Clockman had appeared on Pinwheel, a children's show that was sort of like Sesame Street, that aired on Nickelodeon from 1977 to 1990. The series had a total of 260 one-hour episodes throughout its entire run, meaning that around 260 hours of content would need to be scoured through to find Clockman, and a large amount of it just wasn't readily available online. There were also many other factors that stood in the way. Clockman was not the official name of the shorts. Nobody knew what it was called, and Pinwheel didn't have any sort of home media release. With Commander Santa's thread receiving over 800 comments within 24 hours, the stories of this short spread across the internet like wildfire. Within a single day, it had spread to World of Warcraft forums, Minecraft forums, Yahoo Answers, HibboTank, and of course, 4chan, specifically the X Paranormal board. Within the same year that the original thread was posted on the Flood, Commander Santa went to 4chan for help. Upon his post, an anonymous user responded with the second official plot summary for Clockman.
Holy shit, I remember this fucking short. It was like claymation with poorly made dolls, and the animation was real stuttery and shit. It started with the kid's mom telling him goodnight and closing the door behind her after shutting off the light. Then the door slowly creaks open while a generic wind sound blows, and the camera cuts to the kid's room at the foot of his bed. He struggles to open his eyes as they slowly droop, and he eventually gives in and goes to sleep. Then it cuts to the clock while the second hand slowly ticks to 12. When it hits, there's like a low bell ringing sound, and the camera goes back to the foot of the kid's bed. The Clockman's head peeks into the room like the clock were a window. Unlike what the OP's image shows, the Clockman's head then recedes back, and his arms come out and pushes the clock open like a door, revealing a big dark hole behind the clock. Then Clockman hops out of the hole, and the kid wakes up and stares beady-eyed at the Clockman. Then the Clockman starts doing like a weird Irish Rivers dance. Oh, and the Clockman looks a little different from the picture. He was wearing like an all-black turtleneck sweater and a black bowler hat. His skin was green, and I don't really remember him having a beard, but he did have a big toothy smile and two real big eyes with very tiny pupils.
The 4chan user's description of the events heavily differ from Commander Santa's. For instance, the user remembers the Clockman appearing with green skin, no beard, and a turtleneck sweater and a bowler cap instead of a cloak. Additionally, he recalled that the Clockman did an Irish dance upon his entrance to the child's room. Despite the amount of differences between the anonymous user's account of the shorts and his own description, Commander Santa confirms that they are talking about the exact same shorts, and that one of them must have just misremembered some details. Around this time, Commander Santa purchased DVDs of Pinwheel. Despite there being no official home media release of the show, fans have compiled many episodes into DVDs and made them available for purchase. Despite his best efforts, he was unable to find the Clockman on any of the DVDs. The story of Clockman became widely known in 2012 with Commander Santa's post on the Flood. However, it can actually be traced all the way back to as early as 2004 on a website known as The Animation Nation. On a thread where users were discussing horror elements in Western animation, a user named Michael W. Howe posted about a few frightening shorts he had seen on Nickelodeon's Pinwheel when he was younger. Sitting in plain sight amongst the other descriptions was a paragraph that sounded eerily similar to Clockman.
But I found it once at my first elementary school, and then I forgot what it was called. Then there was one based on the story of a little girl who lost her red shoes. So she asked a local wizard for help who could appear and disappear anywhere. He helped her, but told her she had to tell her mom. The little girl goes home and doesn't, hoping the wizard would forget. But then the music gets eerie as the narrator says, "But the wizard did not forget." And we see him appearing and disappearing along the house floors till he suddenly pops out of her clock and steals her away, demanding to know why she didn't tell her mom. She makes up for it by sewing stars to put in the night sky, and the next day is returned home and tells her mom the truth. And then, of course, there was the Willy Wonka blueberry scene and also...
At the time, this description was glossed over and not much thought was given to it by others. However, when Howe's post was rediscovered in 2012, this was seen as a huge turning point that converted all of those who didn't believe Clockman was real. Anyone who doubted Commander Santa and the anonymous 4chan user reconsidered when seeing this obscure post from almost a decade ago that lined up with their descriptions. This was definitely not a creepypasta. This was real. Despite the hype and excitement that spurned from the discovery of Michael W. Howe's post, the search died down and remained dormant for about 2 years. Then, out of nowhere, the creator of the Lost Media Wiki, known as Daikate, reignited the search. Daikate published an article on the Lost Media Wiki detailing the search so far, as well as his own efforts to contact various Nickelodeon employees that would have information on Pinwheel, and more specifically, Clockman. After having little to no success with reaching out, Daikate decided to contact Michael W. Howe. The two sent messages back and forth, solidifying the description from the original Animation Nation post and elaborating on it. The version that came out of these talks is perhaps the most detailed and in-depth description of Clockman yet.
The show starts with a girl getting a new pair of shoes from her mother, who cautions her not to lose them. The girl wanders off a ways to play, but upon planning to return home, she finds she can't find her shoes. After looking everywhere for them, she remembers there's a wizard nearby who might help her. The strange thing is we see the wizard appearing and disappearing in trees and in various areas around his home. The girl asks the wizard for help and he gives her replacement shoes but tells her that she needs to tell her mother what happened. However, the girl goes home and doesn't. During the episode, a female narrator can be heard. I still remember her going, she felt that the wizard would forget their deal. The scene then changes back to the wizard's abode with him looking a little upset. The scene then cuts to inside the girl's house where she's in bed with a pendulum clock near her bed, as the narrator whispers in an eerie way, but the wizard did not forget. We then see 2 floors of the house, with the wizard appearing and disappearing several times, first on the first floor, then on the second, then outside her door. Scared, she hides under the covers, and then the pendulum stops, and a window forms on the clock out of which the wizard appears and takes her to his place, where he demands to know why she did not tell her mother the truth. The girl claims she was afraid of what her mother would say if she told her she lost the shoes. The wizard said something and there were buildings that turned into skyscrapers. My scant memory is that he said he used his magic to make tall buildings, but don't quote me on that. He then is willing to forgive her if she'll knit stars to place in the sky. She does so and he returns her home. The next day, she tells her mother what happened, and instead of her mother calling the police to arrest the wizard, the mother forgives her daughter, and all is well. We also see the wizard watching them through a telescope, smiling. That's about 90% of what I remember from the segment. I probably saw it quite a few times growing up. I still watched Pinwheel up until Nick took it off. Unfortunately, I just have my memories of the episode. I recall it almost moved like it was stop-motion paper animation, like they laid the characters on the backgrounds and moved them around. I want to say maybe around the time I was 5 to 7 years old.
Howe describes a similar tale to the one he posted way back in 2004, but with new vivid details that fills in the blanks. He describes the narrator, the environmental layout of the shots, the animation style, even some of the lines spoken. Howe states that he had seen the short multiple times as a child on Pinwheel. It was around this time that Commander Santa had decided to banish himself from the Flood forums. He decided to leave the forums until Clockman was found, as a sort of sign of commitment. This made Daikate's attempts to contact him extremely difficult, but he was eventually able to speak with him in early 2015 on the site Nintendo Age. However, he was unable to get any new bits of information out of him. Thanks to his in-depth talks with Michael W. Howe, resulting in a much more detailed description, Daikate tried once more to contact people who had worked on Pinwheel in the past. However, instead of contacting the studio, he decided to contact the creators directly. Almost immediately, Daike was successful in making contact with a member of the Pinwheel team. Michael Karp, a writer, director, and voice actor on Pinwheel, responded to a post Daike had left on his Stage 32 page. Karp responded with a vague memory of the Clockman short, saying that the film was most likely produced for the first season of Pinwheel, around 1980 to 1981. However, as Karp had come onto the series during the second season, he didn't have any knowledge of the Clockman shorts. He did know someone who did though, executive producer Tippy Fortune. Tippy Fortune, also known as Lois Fortune, was an executive producer on Pinwheel at the time that Clockman would have supposedly aired on the show. Michael Karp was kind enough to give Daike her email address, who then went on to forward her all the information he had, in the hopes of a solid lead. Tippy responded pretty quickly, impressed with Daike's investigative skills, stating that, unfortunately, she just doesn't remember the Clockman short. She did reveal something pretty interesting though. Most of the films that aired on Pinwheel were acquired by Co Films. This company had a large library of films from around the world, and made their money from selling these films to other studios, such as HBO and Nickelodeon. However, studios like Nickelodeon eventually began to produce their own material, and there was no longer any need to purchase films from Co. The founder, Bernice Co, attempted to sell off the company, but there were no buyers. It's not really known what happened to the company, but it's no longer in business. When Tippy attempted to Google the company, Bernice Co, and her associate Min Levy, there were no results. It was as if they vanished. Despite the lack of information she was able to provide, Tippy included the emails of the members on the Pinwheel team that were heavily involved in acquiring programming for the show. She also included a list of children's media organizations that could have a lead on the Clockman shorts. While one of the members, James Calistro, did not reply, two other members, known as Louise Phillips and Bob Perlman, did, but unfortunately they didn't have any information that Daike already knew. Additionally, the organizations that he was able to get in contact with didn't have any new information either. Daike then focused in on Co Films as the key to finding the Clockman shorts. Bernice Co unfortunately passed away in 2001, but Daike was able to get into contact with her daughter, Jane, who enthusiastically responded, looking to help in whatever way she could. Throughout the long search for Clockman, many false leads popped up from time to time, setting the community up for disappointment. The most common story that many mixed Clockman up with was the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale, The Red Shoes. The story follows a poor orphan girl who is adopted by a rich woman, eventually causing her to become spoiled. Soon she is gifted with a beautiful pair of red shoes, which she decides to wear everywhere. She wears them to church but is scolded by an old woman, saying that only black shoes should be worn to church. She ignores her and wears them to church again the next time. Except this time, a red bearded soldier appears and talks to the shoes, saying, "Oh, what beautiful shoes for dancing. Never come off when you dance." The shoes begin to dance, with the girl suffering from the constant movement. She eventually gets her feet amputated, but the shoes still don't stop. She finally gets forgiveness, before ascending straight to heaven. Yeah, these old fairy tales, they didn't mess around. Many, understandably, confuse this story with the Clockman, given the similarities between the two. The shoes, the bearded man, the role of the mother, the themes about not being spoiled, so on and so forth. In the Clockman short that we've heard about, the girl sews stars into the sky as a way to atone for her punishment. While in this story, the girl suffers and then dies from amputation. Many assume this was changed in the short due to its airing on Pinwheel, but then it was later debunked as its own separate story. One of the largest red herrings in the search would be the Irish origins of the tale, and the river dancing we heard about from the anonymous 4chan user. This was also proven to be false. Another false lead came in the form of the 7 o'clock man. Many of Pinwheel shorts came from Canada, so it was speculated that Clockman was inspired by Quebec folktales. In the 7 o'clock man, a man hides in a child's bedroom and steals them if they do not go to sleep after their bedtime. While it did seem kinda similar to the version of Clockman we've been hearing about, it didn't fully match up with Commander Santa's description. And at the time, this was the closest thing we had. That is, until December 10th, 2017. 5 years since the search had began, a Lost Media Wiki user by the name of Nitrate Nerd was doing their own research in the Clockman, in the hopes of finding a lead. They searched for an educational film titled The Wizard on WorldCat, a worldwide library catalog. After scouring through several pages, they instead found a listing for a short titled Sally, which had a YouTube link. After following the link, they found that the video was identical to the descriptions made by Commander Santa and Michael W. Howe. That's right, they found it on YouTube. The video had been uploaded by AAA Studios, the current owners of the shorts. The video was sent to Commander Santa, who confirmed that it was indeed the Clockman. The long search was finally over. The actual name of the short was Oh Paradive Sally, I hope I'm saying that right, or simply About Dressy Sally in English. It was produced in communist Czechoslovakia in 1976 by AAA Studios, otherwise known as Art and Animation Studio. The short was based on the story of the same name, which in turn was inspired by an old English folktale titled The Old Man at the White House from 1897. The actual short was remarkably similar to the second description given by Michael W. Howe, with a few differences, such as the red shoes actually being orange gloves. As Czechoslovakia was a communist nation at the time, the filmmakers never knew where their film ended up being sold off to. It went on to be sold off to the Learning Company of America, who dubbed it into English and titled it Sally, which eventually was picked up by Co Films, leading it to be broadcast on Pinwheel. With the Clockman finally being discovered, a new search began for the English dub. On January 11th, 2018, about a month after the original was discovered, the English dub appeared online, thanks to a discussion between Lost Media Wiki user Tommy Shadow and the organization known as AV Geeks, an educational film preservation group who had the dub in their archives. A week later, a full HD version was uploaded online.
She fell asleep. But the wizard did not forget. He picked her up and carried her to his magic chamber.
And so ends one of the longest and most eventful lost media searches in recent history. What began as nothing more than just creepypasta speculation became reality, thanks to the dedication and hard work of people like Daikate, Michael W. Howe, Nitrate Nerd, and so on. The Clockman was finally found.